The United States could potentially betray Ukraine and, by extension, all of Europe. Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff, Donald Trump's special envoys, are actively plotting behind President Zelensky's back. And Kirill Dmitriev, who serves as Putin's special envoy, openly mocks and ridicules Europeans, particularly German Chancellor Merz, thereby effectively exposing a conspiracy involving Russia and America, directed against both Europe and Ukraine. Hello, my name is Anastasia Gusareva, and I'm here to tell you what to anticipate and what to rely on. And of course, as is customary, I'll kindly ask you to subscribe, like this video, and share your thoughts in the comments about everything I'm about to discuss. But, as I traditionally tell you all, let's discuss everything in order. Therefore, journalists from the well-known German media publication Der Spiegel acquired the call transcript of a conversation held between the distinguished European leaders and the esteemed Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy. This specific discussion was held in a private, confidential setting on the 1st of December. This event specifically transpired immediately after the Ukrainian and American delegations had concluded their critical meeting in Florida. But we'll discuss that further later on. So, what exactly do we know regarding this specific meeting? During this meeting, Macron did not hold back his words. He stated quite clearly, there is a real possibility that the United States could betray Ukraine regarding its territories without any clear understanding of security guarantees. In his view, Zelenskyy faces a significant danger. The German Chancellor, Friedrich Merz, also supported his French counterpart, emphasizing that Zelenskyy needed to exercise extreme caution in the days ahead. They are playing games with both you and us, he declared, quite possibly alluding to American negotiators Jared Kushner, who is Donald Trump's son-in-law, and Steve Witkoff, a close associate and friend of Donald Trump. Both of them are businessmen, as we have heard repeatedly on numerous occasions and as we are very well aware. Finnish President Alexander Stubb, also present at the meeting, additionally expressed his reservations. He is notably among the few European leaders who share a particularly strong rapport with Donald Trump. We shouldn't abandon Ukraine and Volodymyr to face these individuals on their own, he stated at a particular moment within the discussion. NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte, also highly respected by Donald Trump, joined the Finnish president. According to the written protocol, Rutte voiced his support for Stubb, stating explicitly, "I agree wholeheartedly with Alexander that we absolutely must protect Volodymyr." These and other statements, meticulously documented in the call transcripts, vividly reveal the deep distrust Europeans harbor toward Trump's two most trusted associates. Even though Europeans consistently lauded Washington's latest peace initiative, the document reveals that beyond Merz and Macron, other participants in the discussion likewise harbored deep suspicions toward the two American envoys. This information comes from Der Spiegel, and there was a significant number of Europeans present. Attendees included German Chancellor Friedrich Merz, French President Emmanuel Macron, Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk, Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni, Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen, Norwegian Prime Minister Jonas Gahr Støre, Finnish President Alexander Stubb, NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte, and the head of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, and the President of the European Council, Antonio Costa. These individuals were all in attendance during this particular conference call meeting, which included discussions with Volodymyr Zelenskyy. Macron's rather pointed comments, suggesting the United States might betray both Ukraine and Europe, certainly startled a great many people. So, as is often the case, journalists began to investigate whether Macron genuinely no longer places his trust in the United States of America. The press offices of the French president and the NATO Secretary General did not provide a response to Spiegel journalists' inquiry regarding the authenticity of the information released. Multiple individuals, who were direct witnesses to the discussion and spoke solely on the condition of anonymity, corroborated to Spiegel the occurrence of the call and the overarching substance of the exchange. However, they declined to corroborate the exact quotations. Zelensky's office informed journalists they would abstain from making any remarks and declined to comment on the leaked information. The Élysée Palace strongly denied the claims that Macron had expressed such sentiments, particularly that he had talked about the potential risk of betrayal originating from the United States of America. The Élysée Palace stressed that the president did not employ such specific phrasing, further explaining that they were unable to release the precise statements given the confidential character of the leaders' discussion. Simultaneously, the press service brought attention to Macron's earlier public statements, in which he favorably assessed the United States' involvement in the ongoing negotiation process. Meanwhile, Merz's team announced that they, for their part, have no intention of responding to the conversation fragments that found their way into the media. And indeed, European leaders have consistently and publicly lauded Donald Trump himself, along with the United States of America's Fresh Peace Initiative, on numerous occasions. Here's what Macron, for instance, stated at a joint press conference with Volodymyr Zelenskyy after the meeting that took place.
Currently, within this particular configuration, the United States has assumed the significant role of mediator, and I truly welcome the efforts of President Trump's team. And the United States, Ukraine, and all Europeans, we all ardently desire peace. That is truly the central objective of all our efforts. Of the latest negotiations, the latest rounds of meetings.
This is quite complimentary. In response, German Chancellor Friedrich Merz, during a joint press conference with Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk in Berlin, following their telephone conversation, affirmed their commitment to holding the transatlantic community together to the greatest extent possible. During the Geneva negotiations involving Europeans, the U.S. delegation, headed by Secretary of State Rubio and representatives from Ukraine, initial headway was achieved in formulating a peace plan, according to officials, who further noted that this effort is set to persist. According to their statements, security advisors for the Europeans maintain continuous contact with both Ukraine and the United States of America. And indeed, no mention of any betrayal whatsoever is heard here. So we are left wondering, is there indeed a conspiracy brewing between the United States of America and Russia? And is it possible that Trump's team could genuinely betray Ukraine and by extension Europe? And naturally, do Europeans truly harbor such reservations? Surprisingly, Kirill Dmitriev, Putin's negotiator, inadvertently exposed the actual state of affairs. He was practically the sole individual who commented on this leak from Der Spiegel. Moreover, he openly mocked and ridiculed Merz in this situation, behaving in a completely brazen manner. This is precisely what he posted on his ex-social media account.
He accuses the Americans of playing games. Dear Merz, you're not even in the game. You've disqualified yourselves with warmongering, disrupting peace efforts, unrealistic proposals, the suicide of Western civilization, migration, and stubborn stupidity.
The comment is brazen, undiplomatic, and this comment gives us the understanding that such a conversation between European leaders and Zelenskyy really did happen. Otherwise, Dmitriev would not have reacted as he did. Dmitriev's audacious remarks in this comment lead to the belief that Russian-American meetings might have explored options for a so-called peace plan, completely overlooking Europe's and even more so, Ukraine's perspectives and interests. Adding to this collection of cordial Russian-American relations, we should also include the recently leaked conversations between Witkoff and Witkoff. In these discussions, they, much like old companions, deliberated on the subsequent course of action, with Witkoff even providing guidance on how to engage with Trump. Witkoff additionally suggested to Witkoff that he create a peace plan similar to what Trump had advanced in the Middle East. The idea was simple. Moscow supposedly plans the idea of a peace plan with Trump. Trump approves. Then both sides speak of moving to peace. Meanwhile, genuine concessions from Ukraine might still be considered by the Kremlin. Witkoff likewise intimated that he recognizes the importance for Russia to command the Donbas region, potentially involving a land exchange. Witkoff, in turn, while in conversation with Witkoff, attentively listened to and agreed with the recommendations, promising to convey them to the Russian dictator. And most remarkably, Moscow actually implemented some of Witkoff's suggestions. Just days before Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy was set to arrive in the Oval Office, Vladimir Putin made a phone call to Donald Trump, extending congratulations and hailing him as a true man of peace, precisely in line with the suggestion made by Stephen Witkoff. Consequently, we are well aware that the aforementioned visit ultimately did not yield a favorable outcome for our interests. We didn't get the tomahawks, and Trump once again emphasized that Ukraine holds no trump cards. However, this particular meeting wasn't nearly as scandalous as that earlier one in February, held in the Oval Office. Regarding the actual plan from the United States of America, some people are entirely certain it was initially drafted in Russia and then merely rendered into the English language. The first draft of the peace initiative that Washington proposed to Kiev contained 28 points. One of the key points concerned the issue of territories and essentially meant recognizing Crimea, as well as parts of the Luhansk and Donetsk regions, as Russian. On November 23rd in Geneva, Ukraine, the US, and European leaders began a series of negotiations. Following consultations, the American side revised the document, reducing its points from 28 to 19, while incorporating the Ukrainian delegation's feedback. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelenskyy, for his part, emphasized that the proposal maintained the provision for the exchange of civilian and military prisoners on the principle of all for all, and also for the repatriation of Ukrainian children transported to Russia. Sergei Kislitsia, Ukraine's deputy foreign minister, who happened to be part of the Ukrainian delegation, noted that the amnesty clause was reworked to fully consider the views and demands of those significantly affected by the conflict, ensuring their experiences were addressed. Furthermore, the US abandoned the idea of limiting the size of the armed forces of Ukraine. The territorial issue was put aside by agreement of the parties. It is to be discussed directly by Presidents Volodymyr Zelenskyy and Donald Trump. And then, consultations commenced. Witkoff and Kushner journeyed to Moscow, where Putin greeted them, accompanied by his foreign policy advisor, Yuri Ushakov, the very individual who had engaged in discussions with Witkoff. According to Ushakov, the conversation lasted about 5 hours. After the meeting, he reported that the parties had reached an understanding on several issues, and Putin confirmed his support for the negotiators. However, a portion of the proposals did encounter some objections. Ushakov noted that the Russian president did not hide his critical and at times negative attitude towards certain ideas, although overall the participants considered the discussion productive. Meanwhile, the Europeans requested a meeting with Witkoff from Trump, but it did not take place. Witkoff embarked on a journey from Moscow, directly bound for the United States of America. A Ukrainian delegation, led by Rustem Umerov, the Secretary of the National Security and Defense Council, also traveled to the US. There, he subsequently reported the preliminary outcomes of their visit on his social media platforms. By the way, Witkoff did the same. Umerov's post states that over 2 days, Special Envoy for Peace Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner met with the Secretary of the National Security and Defense Council of Ukraine, Rustem Umerov, and the Chief of the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, General Andriy Hnatov. The meeting focused on advancing a realistic and effective path to achieving a lasting and just peace in Ukraine. Both American and Ukrainian officials stressed that bringing the war to an end through concrete measures leading to a ceasefire and de-escalation is vital. This is essential not only for preventing further aggression, but also for ensuring the successful execution of Ukraine's comprehensive recovery plan, which aims to make the nation significantly stronger and more prosperous than it was prior to the conflict. Thus, the outcome of America's peace initiative will soon become clear to us all, but for the present moment, we must acknowledge that Putin persists in delivering ultimatums to both Ukraine and the European nations. Trump consistently pressures Ukraine, and additionally, he's suspending and threatening to completely cut off aid to Ukraine, while simultaneously pausing sanctions against Lukoil and Rosneft, targeting certain specific clauses within those sanctions. Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff are continuing negotiations with the Russians. The Ukrainian delegation is continuing negotiations with the Americans. And as for us, we're waiting for security guarantees and a stable peace. And of course, we continue to provide donations and support to the armed forces of Ukraine. Thank you so much for joining us today. Make sure to subscribe, give us a thumbs up, and share your impressions of everything you've heard. So, in your opinion, do you truly think there's a conspiracy forming between the United States of America and Russia, and that they will ultimately abandon both Europe and Ukraine? I will certainly be reading how you evaluated this entire situation. And we'll see you next time. I'm Anastasia Gusareva. Take care, wash your hands with soap. Bye, everyone.